we need to talk about Puerto Rico because people keep asking us about banking here. So here are 5 facts that you need to know before applying for accounts. First, Puerto Rico is a secrecy jurisdiction, so no CRS. And yes, that means that Puerto Rican banks will not share your information with your country of residence. Second, deposits here are super low. In most cases, you can open an account for yourself or your company with only $5,000 to $25,000. Third, the Puerto Rican banks that cater to foreigners always open accounts 100% remotely, so there's no need to visit the island or submit documents in person. Fourth, you're going to find good English-speaking customer support at almost all of the banks that accept foreign clients, so you don't need Spanish. And the 5th point, which is by far the most important, is that you should never bank in Puerto Rico. And there are 4 really simple reasons for this, and I know that when you hear them, you'll also agree that it doesn't make sense to bank here. And I'm going to tell you these reasons in exactly 22 seconds. But I do want to point out that this video isn't just about avoiding Puerto Rico. I'm also going to be sharing 3 alternative banking hubs with you, where you can access better banks with a lot fewer headaches. And to wrap things up, I'm going to take this video in the opposite direction and tell you the 5 times that it might make sense to actually bank in Puerto Rico. But if you're not rich, these opportunities, they probably won't work for you. Okay, the 4 reasons why you should never bank in Puerto Rico. Starting with reason number 1. Most of the banks here are not banks. If you're a foreigner thinking about opening a Puerto Rican bank account, you're almost definitely looking to open with an IFE or an IBE, International Financial Entity, or an International Banking Entity. Yes, they're regulated by the Commissioner of Financial Institutions on the island, but they're not banks. And this goes way beyond the semantics of licensing language. Their oversight is managed locally in Puerto Rico, not by the US Fed or the FDIC. Now, a few changes at the end of last year did make it harder to get a license. But easy licensing isn't the issue. It's that IFEs and IBEs, they struggle with one of the most important elements of any well-functioning bank, correspondent bank relationships. Now, this isn't the case for all IFEs and IBEs, but it is the case for the vast majority of them, especially those that are actively trying to attract foreign non-resident customers. And that brings us to reason number 2 why you should avoid Puerto Rico. Most Puerto Rican IFEs and IBEs are set up for one of 2 reasons. First, they get set up by banks from other countries, usually Latin American countries, that want to give their existing clients access to USD banking or non-CRS accounts. I've even had bankers in foreign countries tell me that their bank set up Puerto Rican divisions so they could offer a level of secrecy to their clients that they can't give them in their home country. Now, the second reason that Puerto Rican IFEs and IBEs get set up is for structuring purposes. Basically, wealthy individuals, families, or commercial groups set up Puerto Rican entities for tax optimization, redomiciling their wealth, meeting the banking needs of other group companies, or even for visa purposes. Now, the point is, Puerto Rican IFEs and IBEs are rarely set up to offer offshore banking to the public. And that means they don't offer a lot of the benefits and protections that most people are looking for when opening accounts. And that brings us to reason number 3, which is that Puerto Rican IFEs and IBEs don't offer deposit insurance. And listen, I'm not saying that you should rely on deposit insurance to protect your wealth. Most of our clients deposit much more than the insured amount regardless of where they open. But in those cases, some of their deposit, usually between $50,000 and $250,000, is covered. And the point is, if you can open with banks that have deposit insurance, why not get the extra layer of protection? And that brings us to the 4th reason why you should avoid Puerto Rico. But as a quick reminder, after this, I am going to tell you the alternative places you can bank instead. So reason number 4 to not bank in Puerto Rico is that if you can open an account in Puerto Rico, you can also open an account in the United States. And here I'm talking about opening with real brick and mortar FDIC insured US banks. No fintech accounts, digital banks, or anything like that. Real banks. And we help clients open in the US all the time, even with major banks like Chase, Bank of America, Citi, and many others. And yes, I'm talking about opening remotely, with deposits that are sometimes the same or even lower than those in Puerto Rico. And like Puerto Rico, the US is not a signatory to CRS. And for all of these reasons, the US is often one of the first alternatives that we will suggest to people who are looking to bank in Puerto Rico. But it's not the only alternative. So here are 2 more alternatives that you can consider, depending on what you're optimizing for. And one more quick point on the US, it can be a good alternative to Puerto Rico if you're looking for transactional banking, deposit insurance, or you just want to invest. But it's not the only US dollar banking option available. Instead, this next country can also be a suitable place to bank in dollars, especially with lower deposits. And here, I'm talking about Panama. Now, I recently did a video on Panama, this one right here, and Panama has a few interesting banks that most people can access. It's an offshore banking hub. Accounts are opened 100% remotely, and deposits start between $5,000 and $25,000, just like Puerto Rico. Importantly, it's also an option for offshore and complex structures, as long as you can get through compliance. Now, bank selection is extremely important in Panama, and you need to make sure that you speak with the right banker. But if you can do that, you'll get a viable alternative to Puerto Rico that still offers a lot of the same benefits. Now, the third alternative that I want to cover is Jersey, in the Channel Islands. This is a controversial banking hub. It's had a ton of scandals and bad press, but it's one of our favorite places for offshore banking. And frankly, it's an excellent addition to any international banking strategy. I also covered Jersey in a recent video, and I'll share this one with you at the end in case you want to find out why we like Jersey so much for offshore banking. Though I will say, unlike Panama and Puerto Rico, you're looking at higher deposits if you do open here, typically between $100,000 and $250,000 US. But accounts are open remotely, and you'll have a number of banks to choose from. So those are the reasons to avoid Puerto Rico and the 3 places that you should think about banking instead. But now I'm turning the table. I want to share 5 times when it can make sense to use Puerto Rico as part of your international banking strategy. 3 of these times are directly tied to banking, and the other 2 are indirectly tied to banking, but help optimize your overall structure. And the first example, which is by far the most straightforward, is if you're a client of a foreign bank that has a branch in Puerto Rico, and you want a fast way to access an international account, US dollar banking, or greater privacy. If that's you and your current bank offers easy access to an account for diversification, why not? Now, the second reason, also related to banking, is for business owners, often with large cross-border businesses moving around a lot of money. And that's because we see a lot of privately held companies that struggle to open and keep open bank accounts. Some of these business owners set up their own financial institution to support the needs of their own companies. Of course, you still need to meet the requirements of correspondent banks and ultimately keep a bank up and running. But if you have a big enough company or group of companies and you're already spending time and energy playing whack-a-mole trying to keep accounts opened, this option can make a lot of sense. Now, the next 2 reasons are about structuring and taxes. But this is not tax advice, so I'm going to be keeping this brief. Reason 3 is the most obvious. If you're planning on becoming a resident of Puerto Rico to take advantage of the tax benefits offered through Act 60, you might want to consider Act 273 and get your own financial institution in the process. How you use this institution will depend on the business case that you put forward to the regulators, but there's some flexibility here. Now, reason number 4 to use Puerto Rico is all about optimizing investments into new companies in other countries. Let's say you're setting up a company in a foreign country, something capital intensive, like manufacturing, agriculture, or even real estate. Well, instead of contributing the majority of the capital in equity, you can contribute most of it in debt, as long as the country where you're investing doesn't have thin capitalization rules. And the reason you do this is because repaying debt and the interest on debt is tax deductible. And that means if your personal bank in Puerto Rico is the issuer of the debt, you're just paying back yourself plus interest, reducing the taxes that your new company has to pay wherever it operates. And the 5th and final time when it might make sense to bank in Puerto Rico is if you actually live there. And frankly, if you're an American, Puerto Rico is one of the most attractive places that you can move in terms of raw tax optimization, short of renouncing your citizenship. But if that's not you, I'd encourage you to look elsewhere, starting with the United States and other options like Panama and Jersey. And as mentioned earlier, I just published new videos on both Panama and Jersey last week. So if you're looking to deposit between $5,000 and $25,000, I'll give you my thoughts on Panama over here. And if you're looking to deposit more than $100,000, I'll tell you why Jersey is one of my favorite offshore banking hubs right over here.